Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another third stimulus check unemployment benefits extension update. So we have some really great news, I guess, to start off this video to share right onto the spot. But today's update is really going to be focused all about the lawsuit situation because it has already been a while since we've sent out an update about where all of these states stand. Now, there are still a couple of states that have been relatively quiet. So as always, if I don't get to your state, just know that it's probably because they still haven't really released as much information, but we tried to cover as much as we can. And if you have any particular information, feel free to comment and share it down below because I think a lot of other people would appreciate it. But to maybe start out with one great news is that we now officially have received word that there is now officially one more state that has now officially filed a brand new lawsuit in order to join in the fight to try to bring back unemployment. And keep in mind, as always, is that because all of these lawsuits and payments are retroactive, which is the great thing, it does mean is that essentially even if the state or even if unemployment has already ended in your particular state, like for most people on Labor Day, it does mean that as long as they win the lawsuit at some point, all of these payments can potentially be retroactive all the way back to whenever they actually officially ended. So maybe to share the great news to start off with is that there is now officially one more state that has now just filed a lawsuit, and that state is a huge congrats to the state of Arizona for officially becoming the 16th state to file a lawsuit in order to try to bring back unemployment. So I believe is that as of the time that I'm making this video, specifically on Thursday, September 9th, 2021, we now officially have 16 lawsuits and those specific states. Now, obviously, some of these states, the case has already been solved. Some of it did end up going through and they officially did win their unemployment back, so huge congrats there. And some of them of course struggled, but a lot of these states are still kind of at question marks where they kind of are still kind of going on to the fight, so we don't really know the situation. But I believe the 16 states that now should have a lawsuit off of the top of my head, which I'll just read it out right here, is going to be in Indiana, Maryland, Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, Ohio, Arkansas, South Carolina, Tennessee, Louisiana, West Virginia, Missouri, Alabama, Iowa, New Hampshire, and then of course Arizona. So that is the really great news. And then for the rest of this video, I just want to talk about where all of the states that we do have information about stand. So with that being said, we're going to get started right away, but maybe real fast before we begin, as always, consider smashing the like button, at least especially because we do have some great news to share. At least there's that, much needed after most of last week. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell for similar videos like this. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts about honestly really anything, or any particular information that you might have about your particular state, because a lot of this really is being shared off of local news right now, or just very subtle and under the radar. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So as just mentioned, is that the really great news is that Arizona has officially become the 16th state to file a lawsuit. What's really going on right now is that they recently just opened their lawsuit a couple of days ago, trying to sue Governor Ducey. Hopefully I pronounced that right. I'm not from Arizona. I'm from all the way out in New York. But essentially they're trying to sue the governor of Arizona because they believe that he violated the law by ending unemployment relatively earlier than possible. They're basically trying to model their lawsuit exactly like what a lot of the other states did. The big thing really is that they're trying to demand the governor to essentially try to pay back in retro payments all of the dates that they missed or ended because they ended the unemployment program earlier. So I believe is that they officially ended it back way back in pretty much around the beginning of July. There's been about 8 weeks, so they're trying to get retro payments for the $300 benefits for every single one of those 8 weeks. So when you multiply it together, 300 times 8 is 2,400. They're pretty much trying to demand the governor to pay them $2,400. Now, one thing that is interesting, and we did kind of share this, but there are a lot of new people here, so huge welcome. Consider subscribing if you're brand new here. about Arizona is that Arizona is also interestingly doing a back to work bonus where if you were to try to find employment between now and it's not really confirmed when the end date is, but starting pretty much now until they officially announce it, they are doing a back to work bonus where you can potentially get up to $2,000 for returning back to work. So if all of these things manage to go through, I think the big thing is that the back to work bonus is thankfully already approved, so this is something that you can actually physically take action to do. Of course, the lawsuit's a little bit uncertain because it just literally opened up, but if you were to try to go back to work, you can potentially get the back to work bonus, which is up to $2,000. And then on top of that, if this lawsuit is able to go through, you would still be able to get the retro payments back, basically totaling about $4,400, which is pretty insane. Of course, I already talked a lot about the back to work bonuses, even in a lot of other states. I'll put the video at the very end screen. I believe the name of that video is just called Approved $2,000 Bonus, or just something along that lines, and it talks a lot about other states as well, but that's really just something if it is of interest if you are planning to go back to work, which is what a lot of people are basically forced a hand to do right now. Now the next state that we're really going to be talking about is going to be in Ohio. So Ohio had a little bit of an interesting story. There is a little bit of a rough news to share in Ohio. And the story really is that, and maybe just a huge recap to kind of just backtrack about where the lawsuit basically went, is that originally Ohio was one of the first states to sadly end their unemployment program. They were also one of the first states to file a lawsuit. And we're talking about like way back about 2 months ago. What really ended up happening is that they sadly lost their lawsuit in the beginning, but then they filed an appeal. And then what happened is that the great news is that they actually won the appeal on top of actually winning the judge's support to bring back the unemployment benefits program. But then what sadly ended up happening is that Governor DeWine ended up trying to now fight the judge. So in an indirect way, try to appeal the appeal, even though it's not necessarily what it's called, but it's kind of in that sense. But essentially is that he tried to basically fight the power of the judge by bringing a brand new lawsuit in order to bring it now into the higher court. So in other words, the Supreme Court. The hard news to take in is that it did not go through in the Supreme Court. So what it basically means is that it ended up siding in favor of Governor DeWine in Ohio. So right now at this time is that there's a little bit of a battle. We don't know if the lawyers on the unemployed side, so our side, we don't know if the lawyers in Ohio that's representing the unemployed are going to take any other further action. This is just pretty much the decision that we have. So essentially is that they're kind of at still a little bit of a fight. The hard news is that the Supreme Court, which is the higher court, did end up siding with Governor DeWine. So we just have to wait for more information about, or just to see if any of these sides end up taking any further action. But I figured I would just share it because it is physically what's happening, even though I know it may be very hard to hear, but it is important to just know. Now, the next state that we're really going to talk about is really going to be Texas. Now, the story with Texas is that really the only update that we currently have about Texas is that they are still relatively silent, or they certainly haven't been as vocal ever since the last update that we talked about when it comes to the lawsuit, in the sense that they are trying to postpone and create another hearing. Now, it is believed by word of mouth, so this is not confirmed information, but from a lot of word of mouth that has been passing around, it is believed that in Texas they are going to be doing another hearing sometime in the next 1 to 2 weeks. I'll probably have to get back to maybe confirm with you guys, because again, a lot of this is just very subtle. Maybe comment if you guys have any particular information, because I do know is that they are, at the end of the day, probably the largest state, or certainly the most populated of all of the states that sadly had to experience unemployment ending. I do know is that at this time, one thing though is that Ted Cruz has recently come out, and he pretty much just ended up tweeting and also stating outside basically believing that he also now wants to support Governor Abbott in terms of trying to end the unemployment program, essentially just stating and demanding in just his specific words, we should end unemployment because we need to get people to get a job. So in other words, he's pretty much just demanding people to get a job. That's literally just in his specific words. He's getting a lot of backlash, but this is just figured, I just objectively speaking, want to just share about what's really happening there. Now, interestingly, in the state of Virginia, there is also a lawsuit that's going on in Virginia with unemployment, but I didn't include it in the 16 states we mentioned because the lawsuit that's going on in Virginia, and some people were kind of wanting me to cover about that, it's really about they're trying to essentially sue the Labor Department in Virginia about the actual system with unemployment itself and about a lot of things related to like delays, slow processing times. In other words, is that they're suing Virginia's unemployment office because they want them to essentially upgrade their system and also to maybe give them money in order to make up for all of the delays, basically all of the situations with generally just processing unemployment in general over there. Now, probably the last state that we're really going to be talking about is going to be in Tennessee. So Tennessee is a little bit of an interesting story, is that what happened in Tennessee is that they realized that there were a lot of things that they had to take care of when it comes to getting their lawsuit together. So they did ended up stating that they're going to now officially be having their hearing, or they're going to be postponing or pushing their hearing sometime around the very end of September or the beginning of October. It is very unconfirmed because they don't have a very specific date, but just know is that the decisions in Tennessee, I don't believe at this time there's been any decision that's been made. So there's a little bit of a hopeful news there because hopefully it does end up coming back positive or just, bright news. But the idea is that their lawsuit is still continuing. They're really just working on scheduling their hearing, but specifically now actually physically having their hearing and then trying to go forward from there. I do know that the lawyer's name is Gary Blackburn, so Gary like Gary from SpongeBob, and then Blackburn like BLACKBURN, so Burn. The lawyer there named Gary Blackburn. Essentially, he's going to be the one that's representing the case in Tennessee. So if you do want to look him up, feel free. The big thing I believe is that the judge and them, they did end up stating specifically and confirming is that even though they are a little bit late when it comes to the lawsuit, the great news is that at least it officially exists. And the big thing is that they did confirm is that they will be doing everything retro. So even if they have to postpone this weeks ahead, they will be able to make back the payments if, of course, they are able to win the lawsuit, which is probably the bigger challenge first. They were originally trying to do some kind of injunction where they can continue unemployment until the actual hearing happens, but of course, because of the delay, what ended up happening now that it actually did already end, I believe is that they're pretty much going to now have to move on from the injunction and just pretty much focus on the unemployment case. But beyond that's pretty much what I really just wanted to share in today's update to try to highlight as many states as I can. Again, if I did not get to your state, just know that it's probably because it's still relatively silent. Of course, if you do have any particular information, feel free to also share them as well, because I do think a lot of people would greatly appreciate it as well. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.